What is the price of a bus fare? A few coins, a small amount, the kind of money that most people do not even think about. You reach into your pocket, you pull it out, you pay, you go home. That is all it is. Unless it is your last one. Unless you reached into your pocket that morning and counted every single coin and calculated exactly how much you had and how much the bus home would cost, and the numbers matched perfectly. Not extra, not close, exactly, one bus fare left, that was it, that was all. And then you met a girl. A girl standing at the bus stop completely alone, looking around with wide, scared eyes, holding nothing, no bag, no phone, no money, nothing, because everything had been taken from her by strangers on the road. Her car, her money, everything, gone. And she did not know how to get home. Now here is the question that this whole story is built on. What do you do? If you are the kind of person who has been carrying the weight of an entire household since you were 6 years old, paying rent, buying food, supporting a lazy older brother who does nothing all day except scroll on his phone while you go to construction sites and break your back for a salary that is barely enough. If you are that person, completely exhausted, almost giving up on your own life, reaching the point where nothing feels worth it anymore. What do? Do you keep the bus fare? You have every right to. Nobody would blame you. You have given enough. You have sacrificed enough. You have carried more than your share for more years than you can count. You are allowed to look at this girl and say, I am sorry, I cannot help you, I have nothing to spare. You are allowed to walk away. But the boy in this story did not walk away. He put his hand in his pocket, he counted the coins, he looked at the girl, and he said something that made her stop completely and look at him differently, something honest, something so raw and real that she felt it in her chest like a stone being dropped into water. He said, I am very poor, I do not care about my life right now, but you deserve to get home safe, take this. And he gave her everything he had. Then he turned around and walked home. On foot. Alone. In the dark. Now here is what that boy did not know. He did not know the girl's name. He did not know her story. He did not know that her father had started with nothing, absolutely nothing, the same kind of nothing the boy himself had grown up in, and had built a real estate empire worth billions. He did not know that she was not just any girl, but the only daughter of one of the most powerful men in the city. He did not know that her father's company had more construction contracts than any firm in the country. He did not know any of that. He just gave her his last bus fare because she needed it and he had it. And that one moment, those few coins passed from one hand to another at a bus stop on an ordinary evening, set in motion a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted and neither of them could have stopped. This is the story of Kwesi and Amara. It is a story about the kind of giving that costs you everything you have, about the kind of love that starts with coins at a bus stop and ends in a life neither person imagined, about a boy who almost gave up, who was so tired and so empty and so done, and then met a girl who reminded him that he was worth more than the life he had been handed. And it is about what happens when you give from your absolute lowest point. What comes back to you? How it comes back? And why the universe, when it rewards real generosity, tends to do it so completely that everyone who doubted you ends up watching from a distance. This story has everything. Childhood pain, hard work, a brother who did nothing, a girl who did everything, a billionaire who started from the bottom, a love story that moved faster than logic said it should because both of them recognized something real when they found it. And an ending that will make you want to pick up your phone and call the person in your life who gives the most and thank them properly. Stay right here. This story starts in a small house with 2 orphan boys and ends somewhere so much bigger that you will not believe it is the same person. But it is. It is always the same person, just the same person finally arriving where they always deserve to be. Before we begin, if you believe that what you give at your lowest comes back to you at your highest, hit the like button right now. Do it before the story starts. Subscribe to Fair Folktales and hit that notification bell. We tell the stories that stay with you for days, the stories that make you look at strangers differently. Comment below and tell us, what is the most generous thing you have ever done when you had almost nothing yourself? We read every single comment. Now let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back to the small house. The house was small. Not small the way people say small when they mean modest or compact or cozy. Small the way a space becomes small when it was meant for two people and now holds two people plus all the weight of survival, rent, food, electricity, water, every bill, and only one of the two people is doing anything about any of it. Kwesi Boateng had lived in that house his whole life. He was 22 years old. He was the younger of two brothers. He had a body that was lean and hard from years of construction work, hands that were permanently marked by mortar and dust, and eyes that were always slightly more tired than a 22-year-old's eyes should be. His parents had died when he was 6. Not together, his mother first from illness, and his father 14 months later, from grief and an underlying health problem that nobody had diagnosed because the kind of hospital that diagnosed things in advance cost money the family did not have. Kwesi was too young to understand what grief was. He just understood that first one person was gone and then another, and the house was different and nothing was the way it had been. His brother Kofi was 13 when their parents died, old enough to understand, old enough to be looked at by neighbors and relatives and well-meaning people as the responsible one, the one who would step up, the one who would hold things together and take care of his little brother. Kofi was now 31. He had not stepped up. This was not a dramatic failure. It was a quiet one, which made it worse in some ways. A quiet failure is one that nobody can fully point to and say that is the problem. Kofi was not a violent man, he was not cruel. He was simply absent, present in the house in his body, sitting on the chair with the phone in his hand, but absent from everything that the house required. The rent was due, not his problem. The food was running low, he would eat whatever appeared. The electricity bill had not been paid, someone would sort it. That someone was always Kwesi. From the age of 8, Kwesi had started doing whatever work was available. Small things first, running errands for neighbors, helping at the provision store down the road, washing cars on weekends. He was a child doing adult work, and most people who hired him knew it and paid him accordingly, which meant not enough. But not enough was more than nothing. He finished primary school. He finished junior secondary. He was good at school, not brilliant but methodical, the kind of student who understood that effort covered the gap between natural talent and passing grades. But when senior secondary came, the math was impossible. The school fees, the uniforms, the books. Kwesi sat at the small kitchen table one night and added up the numbers 3 times, hoping they would change. They did not change. He did not go to senior secondary. He got a job instead. Through a neighbor, a man named Mr. Antwi who ran a small construction crew, Kwesi got his first construction job at 16. Mixing cement, carrying blocks, cleaning tools. The work was physically brutal in the way that construction work is always physically brutal, especially for a 16-year-old who had not yet grown into his full size. His arms ached, his back ached, his hands blistered and then toughened. But he showed up, every single day, on time. And Mr. Antwi, who had worked with many young men and knew the difference between the ones who would stay and the ones who would disappear when something easier came along, noticed this and kept him. By 18, Kwesi was a full construction worker. By 20, he had moved to a larger company, Mensa Construction, where the salary was slightly better and the projects were bigger. He took the bus to work every morning. He took the bus home every evening. He paid the rent and bought the food and kept the lights on. Kofi scrolled. This had become the rhythm of their life together, and Kwesi had stopped mostly being angry about it, not because he had accepted it, but because anger was expensive. It cost energy he needed for other things, and energy was not a resource he had in abundance. He had, however, started to feel something else. Something quieter and more dangerous than anger. Hopelessness. The specific hopelessness of a person who looks at their own life and cannot see how anything gets better, not because he was not working. He was working harder than most people around him, but the salary from Mensa Construction was enough to keep them alive and not enough to change anything. Every month was the same: earn, pay, survive, repeat. No savings, no path forward, no higher education that might open different doors. He was 22 years old, and he felt like a man of 50. He got up every morning because not getting up was not an option. He went to work because the rent had to be paid. He came home because there was nowhere else to go. And some nights, sitting at the same kitchen table where he had once added up numbers and found them not adding up, he looked at the wall and thought thoughts that were not good thoughts. He thought about what the point was. He thought about whether it ever changed. He thought about how much longer he could carry this. He did not know that in 4 days, on an ordinary evening at a bus stop, the answer was going to arrive in the form of a girl with nothing in her hands and fear in her eyes. On the other side of the city, in a house that was not small in any sense of the word, a billionaire named Alu Ademi sat in his home office and looked at the same set of contracts he had been reviewing all morning. He was 61 years old. He did not look 61. He looked like a man who had spent his life in disciplined motion, straight back, clear eyes, the unhurried manner of someone who had stopped being impressed by things that were merely expensive a long time ago. Alu Ademi had been born in a room not unlike the one Kwesi Boateng had been born in. Small house, poor family, father who worked and mother who worked and still not enough to go around. He had grown up in Lagos, the second of 4 children, and from a very early age he had understood that the city had a map that most people could not read, a map that showed where the money moved, where the opportunity lived, where the space was for someone with nothing except attention and patience. He had learned to read that map. At 17, he had gotten a job with a small construction firm, not as a skilled worker, just as a general hand. He cleaned, he fetched, he mixed, he carried, he watched. He watched everything. He watched which projects made the company money and which ones cost it. He watched how contracts were won not by being cheapest, as everyone assumed, but by being most reliable. He watched how the men who ran the projects organized their time and their workers. He watched where the waste was. He saved every small thing he earned. Not for a purchase, for a future version of his life that did not exist yet but that he was accumulating the material for. At 24, he registered a business, Ademi Property and Construction, 1 employee, himself. His first contract was a small one, a residential renovation sourced through a church connection, paid poorly. He did it perfectly. The next contract was slightly bigger. The one after that, bigger again. The compound effect of doing every job perfectly, not almost perfectly meant that clients talked. Word of mouth in construction is the most powerful advertising that exists, and Alu's word of mouth said the same thing in every conversation. This man delivers exactly what he says, exactly when he says it. In an industry where this was remarkably rare, it was more valuable than any marketing. By 30, he had a real company with 20 employees. By 35, he had won his first government infrastructure contract, a road project in Lagos State that made him, overnight, a person who was taken seriously at tables where previously he had not been invited. By 40, Ademi Property and Construction was a significant firm with operations in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. He had started a real estate division, residential developments first, then commercial, and the real estate was where the company became something different, not just a construction company anymore, a property empire. He met his wife, Funk, at 32. She was a school teacher, quiet and warm, with the specific competence of a woman who ran a classroom of 40 children with grace and ran a home with the same grace without making either look difficult. She had no interest in the business world. She had every interest in the people in her world. She was the reason their home was warm even when Alu was working 18 hours a day. She was the reason their daughter grew up feeling seen, not just provided for. Amira was born when Alu was 34. She was his only child. Not by choice, Funk had struggled with 2 pregnancies that did not complete, losses that they carried quietly between them, and by the time they had accepted what was and what would not be, Amara was 4 years old and was already the entire definition of enough. Alu raised his daughter the way his wife raised her classroom, by paying full attention. He brought her to work sites when she was small so she could see how things were built. He showed her the company accounts when she was old enough to understand numbers. He did not hide the world from her or present it as easier than it was. He had grown up in the real world and he wanted her to understand it. But he also gave her everything he had not had. A good school, then an excellent school, then university for a business degree because she had wanted it and was good at it, then a role in his company, not a soft role, a real one. She was the regional manager for the Lagos residential division at 25, overseeing a team of 40 people and a portfolio of 12 active development projects. She had earned it, not because of his name. She had earned it because she worked with the same relentlessness her father had worked with, and because she had inherited her mother's quality of paying full attention to the people around her. She was 25 years old. She was a millionaire in her own right from her salary and her portfolio. And she was, on the evening that matters for this story, driving back from a site visit in an unfamiliar part of the city when 2 men on a motorcycle pulled up beside her car, forced her to stop, and took everything. The car, her bag, her phone, her wallet, everything. They left her on the side of the road. She stood there for a moment, watching the motorcycle disappear, and then she did the only logical thing available to her. She walked to the nearest bus stop and stood there and tried to figure out what to do next. She had no phone, she had no money, she did not know this part of the city well enough to walk home, she did not know anyone nearby. She stood at the bus stop and her heart was doing things that hearts do when you have just been through something frightening, and she looked around at the people moving past her and she felt, for the first time in her adult life, completely alone and completely without resources. She did not know that the tired young man walking toward the same bus stop, counting coins in his pocket, was about to change everything. Kwesi saw her before she saw him. He noticed her the way he noticed most things, quietly, without making it obvious. She was standing apart from the other people at the bus stop, not looking at a phone like everyone else was, looking around at the road, at the people, at the bus schedule, with the specific expression of someone who is trying to assemble a solution from the available pieces and finding that the pieces are not enough. He thought tourist maybe, or someone from a different part of the city. He went to stand in the queue. He counted his coins one more time, a habit he had developed because the difference between having bus fare and not having it was not abstract for him. It was the difference between a 20-minute ride and a 90-minute walk. He had exactly enough, barely enough, but enough. He was about to look away from the girl when she turned, and their eyes met. She had the direct, clear look of someone who, despite everything, was not going to pretend she was fine when she needed help. She walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said. Her English was clean and precise in the way of someone who had been well educated, and Kwesi noticed this without judgment, the way he noticed everything. "I know this is strange, but I have been robbed. My car, my phone, my money, everything is gone. I need to get home and I do not know how without money for the bus." He looked at her. She was not performing distress. She was actually distressed. He could see it in the slight tension around her jaw, the way her hands were held, the stillness of someone working very hard to stay composed. And she was asking directly, without embellishment. He liked the directness. He liked that she was not crying to get sympathy. He put his hand in his pocket. He felt the coins. He thought about the walk, an hour and a half, maybe more, through neighborhoods he did not love at this time of evening. He had done it before. He had done it more times than he could count when the money had not stretched far enough. He could do it again. He pulled the coins out. She was watching his face, not his hands, and she saw something there that she would think about later, a specific expression that was not calculation. He was not deciding whether she deserved help. He had already decided. He was just making peace with the cost. He held out the coins. She looked at them. "I cannot," she started. "Please take them," he said. "But how will you?" "I will walk," he said, and then, because the tiredness and the honesty of the day had stripped away whatever filter usually sat between his thoughts and his words, he said the rest of it, the true part. "I am very poor. I almost do not care about my own life right now, but you need to get home safe. That matters to me more than the walk." He paused. "Take it." She stood completely still. She was looking at him with an expression that he could not read, something complex passing across her face, something he did not have the vocabulary for yet. She looked at the coins. She looked at his hands, calloused, work-roughened hands, the hands of someone who built things. She looked at his face. "Your name," she said. "Tell me your name." "Kwesi," he said. "Kwesi," she said at once, trying the shape of it. "I am Amara." She reached out and took the coins. Her fingers brushed his palm for a second. "Thank you, I am going to pay you back, properly." "You do not have to," he said. "I am going to," she said, with the specific calm of a person stating a fact rather than making a promise. "Give me your number." He hesitated. She waited. He told her the number, his old, scratched phone number. The phone that lived in his shirt pocket and whose screen had a crack running corner to corner that he had been ignoring for 8 months because a new screen cost money he did not have. She repeated the number back to him once to confirm it. Then she looked at the road where a bus was appearing in the distance. "Go home safely, Kwesi," she said. "You too," he said. The bus stopped. She got on. The doors closed. He stood at the bus stop and watched the bus pull away. He stood there a moment after it was gone. Then he turned and started walking. The walk was 90 minutes. He knew the route, so he did not need to think about where he was going, which meant he thought about other things. About the girl, her directness, her composure, the way she had not cried or played on his sympathy but just said clearly what had happened and what she needed. About what he had said to her, the raw, unguarded thing about almost not caring about his own life, and how she had not flinched from it. She had received it the way someone receives honest information seriously without discomfort. He thought about whether she would actually call. He thought she probably would not. Not because she was a bad person. He did not get that impression at all. But because people who said they would call and then did not were more common than people who said they would call and did, and he had no reason to expect differently. He got home at 9:30. The house was exactly as he had left it. The television was off. The light in the main room was on. Kofi was on the chair, phone in both hands, thumbs moving on the screen. Kwesi closed the door. He stood in the room and looked at his brother. "There is nothing to eat," Kwesi said, not as an accusation, as a fact. Kofi looked up. "I know. Did you go out today?" "No." "Did you look for work today?" "Kwesi, I am asking." "No." Kofi's tone was not defensive. It was the tone of someone who had stopped defending and had moved into a kind of passive acceptance of his own uselessness that was somehow more frustrating than defensiveness. Something in Kwesi, something that had been building quietly for months, maybe years, came loose. "I walked home tonight," he said. His voice was level. He had learned to keep his voice level even when the inside was not level. "I gave my last bus fare to a girl who needed it more than me, and I walked 90 minutes home, and I come back here and you have not moved from that chair and there is nothing in the house." Kofi looked at his phone. "Why are you always giving things away?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Kwesi said, louder now. "Because some of us still care about people outside this house, because some of us," he stopped, he breathed. "Kofi, I need you to hear me. This is the last time I am saying this. I need you to either start carrying some of this with me or I need you to leave. I am not throwing you out, I am asking you. We do this together or you go somewhere else and figure it out." Kofi looked up from his phone. For a moment, something crossed his face, an emotion real and brief before the flatness returned. "Where am I supposed to go?" he said. "That," Kwesi said, "is your problem, not mine. I have been solving problems for both of us since I was 8 years old and I am done with that arrangement." He looked at his brother. "Think about it, tell me tomorrow." He went to his room. He lay on his bed in the dark and stared at the ceiling. He was 22 years old, he had walked 90 minutes, he had no food in the house, he had given away his last coins to a girl he would never see again. He closed his eyes. Sleep when it came was deep and dreamless. Amora got home at 8:30. Her mother heard the door and came to the hallway and saw her daughter, no bag, no phone, slightly dusty from the roadside, and before Amara could say a word her mother's arms were around her. "I am fine, Mama," Amara said. "You are not fine," her mother said. "You look like you are trying to be fine, which is different." Amara held her mother for a moment, then she stepped back and told her what had happened. Quickly, efficiently, the facts in order, the robbery, the bus stop, the young man. "He gave you his bus fare," her mother said. "His last one, he told me he was going to walk home." Her mother was quiet. "And he said," Amara paused, "he said he almost did not care about his own life right now. He said it like it was just the truth, not to get sympathy, just it came out because he was being honest." Her mother looked at her daughter carefully. Amara was not a person who was easily moved by things. She had inherited too much of her father's composure for that. When Funk looked at Amara's face right now, she saw something that she had not seen there in a long time. She looked moved. "Tell your father," she said gently, "then eat something, then sleep." Alu heard the story over dinner. He listened without interrupting, which was his way, and when Amara finished, he was quiet for a moment. "He told you his name," Alu said. "Kwesi, and I have his phone number." "Good," Alu said simply. He picked up his fork. "You should call him." Amara was already planning to. She lay in her bed that night in the large room with the good mattress and the curtains that blocked all the light, and she stared at the ceiling in a room full of everything. She kept seeing his face. Not his appearance specifically, though she had noticed his appearance. She kept seeing the expression when he took out the coins, the quiet decision in it, the complete absence of performance. Most of the men Amara had encountered in her adult life, business contacts, people from her father's world, men who had tried to date her, had a particular quality in common. They were always performing. Performing competence, performing wealth, performing generosity when generosity was strategically useful. Everything was a calculation. Kwesi had not been calculating. He had been calculating something technically. She could see him counting the coins, see him measuring what the walk would cost him, but he had not been calculating about her, about whether she was worth helping, about what he would get in return. He had simply looked at a person who needed something and given it, and then said the most honest sentence she had heard in recent memory. "I almost do not care about my own life right now." She thought about that sentence for a long time. Not with pity, with something closer to recognition. She had grown up surrounded by success and had never lacked for anything material. But she had spent her adult professional life watching people from the outside and sometimes felt, in a way she had never articulated clearly, that most of the world was performing its life rather than living it. Kwesi was living his, painfully, quietly, without an audience. She turned over in her bed and made a decision. She was going to call him in the morning. Not just to pay him back. She called at 9 in the morning. He was already at the construction site. He felt the phone vibrate in his pocket, saw the unknown number, and almost did not answer. Unknown numbers at work usually meant problems. He answered. "Kwesi," she said, "it is Amara, the bus stop." He stopped walking. "I remember," he said. "I want to pay you back, and I want to know that you got home safely." "I got home," he said. "You do not need to pay me back." "I am going to," she said. "That is settled. Can I ask you something else?" He was standing at the edge of the construction site, the noise of work happening behind him. "What? What you said about not caring about your life right now, did you mean that?" He was quiet for a moment. He should have said no. He should have said it was just something he said, that he was tired, that it was nothing. The normal thing was to walk it back, to make it smaller. "Yes," he said. A pause. "Tell me," she said. He was quiet for longer this time. "I have work," he said. "I know. I will call tonight." He opened his mouth to say she did not need to. She had already ended the call. She called that evening. He was at the kitchen table. Kofi had not given him an answer about the ultimatum. He had not asked. They had moved around each other all morning like two planets in slightly overlapping orbits, and Kwesi had decided to let the silence work on its own time. He answered on the second ring. They talked for 3 hours. He did not plan to talk for 3 hours. It happened the way things happen when you are talking to someone who asks real questions and listens to the answers. The time disappears. She asked about the construction work. He explained. She asked about before construction, how he had ended up there. He explained. She asked about his parents. He told her. She did not react to the difficult parts with the performed sympathy that he had learned to expect from people hearing his story, the tilted head, the soft "oh, I am so sorry." She received the information quietly and asked the next question, which was always a question that showed she had understood the previous answer. He asked about her. She was less forthcoming about specifics, but she talked. Her work, the company, her father. She did not mention the scale of it directly. She said her father was in real estate and construction, that she managed a division, that it was a good job. She said it the way someone says things when they are testing the temperature before they say more. He did not ask about money. She noticed this. He called her the next day before she called him, partly because she had called first both times and it was his turn, partly because he had woken up at 6 in the morning and thought about a thing she had said about her father starting from nothing, and he wanted to ask more. She answered on the first ring. By the end of the first week, they were talking every day. By the end of the second week, sometimes twice. The conversations were long. They talked about work, about family, about the city, about things they wanted that they did not have yet, about things they had always wanted to understand. She made him laugh. This surprised him more than anything else. He had not laughed genuinely, not the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere real, in so long that the first time it happened he sat with it for a moment afterward, registering it. She noticed. "You laugh like you are surprised that it happened," she said. "I am a little," he said. "Why? I do not have much to laugh about usually." "You do now," she said, simply, without making it into something bigger than it was. He sat with that too. It was on the 18th day of talking that she said it. They had been on the phone for 2 hours, late evening, and the conversation had gone to a place it had not been before, to the future. What he wanted, what she wanted. Not in the abstract way of people making conversation, but in the specific way of two people who were starting to include each other in their thinking. "I want to see you," she said, "in person. Come to my house on Saturday." "Emaras. Kwesi, come." I do not think. Why not? He paused. There was something in him, some specific resistance, that he had been carrying for the length of these 18 days and had not put into words yet. Because I am a construction worker, he said finally. I make very little money. I live in a small house with a brother who does nothing. I have no education beyond junior secondary, and you are, he stopped. I am what, she said. You work for a major real estate company. Your father built it. I can hear it in the way you speak about what you do that the scale of it is, he stopped again. I like you, I like talking to you, I do not want to meet you in your world and have that change what this is. The line was quiet. You think I will look at you differently if you see where I live, she said. People do, he said. Kwesi, her voice was careful and direct. I grew up with a father who started with nothing. I know what nothing looks like. I know what it produces in a person who works with it correctly. I am not going to look at your house and see your house. I am going to look at you and see you. I have already been doing that. He was quiet. Saturday, she said, come. He came. He had taken the bus. He did not know where she lived exactly. She had given him the address and he had looked it up on his phone and understood from the area that it was not a small house neighborhood. But understanding something on a phone and standing in front of the reality of it were different things. He stood outside the gate. The gate was large and black and had a security intercom. The wall on either side of the gate was high. Beyond the wall, visible above it, was the upper floor of a house that was not a mansion. He had seen pictures of mansions. This was a home. A very large home, but a home warm-looking, with trees visible above the wall and the kind of light in the windows that said people who actually lived here rather than people who used the space for status. He pressed the intercom. It was her voice that answered. You came, she said. There was a smile in it. I came, he said. The gate opened. She was waiting just inside in a simple dress, her hands at her sides. She looked the same as he remembered, calm, direct, but in this context, in front of this house, he was also seeing something he had not fully understood before. This was not just a girl who worked in a company. This was a girl who lived here, whose family lived here. She saw his face. I know, she said quietly, it is a lot. Come inside. The inside of the house was the inside of a home where someone who had once had nothing had made it their mission to fill every space with warmth. It was not a showroom. There were family photographs on the walls. There were bookshelves with real books. There was the smell of cooking from the kitchen. There was a woman in the kitchen doorway wiping her hands on a cloth, looking at him with the specific careful warmth of a mother meeting someone her daughter has brought home. You are Kwesi, the woman said. Yes, Ma, he said. I am Funk, Amara's mother. Come sit, eat something. He sat. He ate. And then Alu Ademi came down the stairs. Kwesi had seen photographs of powerful men. He had worked on sites owned by powerful men. He knew what they looked like from a distance. Alu Ademi up close was different from all of that. He was not imposing in the way Kwesi had expected, not loud, not large in presence. He was still and attentive, the way that very confident people are still because they have nothing to prove. He sat across from Kwesi and looked at him. Amara told us what happened, he said. Yes, sir. You walked home. Yes, sir. Alu nodded once. I started in construction, he said, carrying things, mixing things, the same work you do now. Kwesi looked at him. I know, Kwesi said. Amara told me some of it. What did she tell you? That you started from nothing, that you built the company from a single contract, that you paid attention to everything. Alu looked at him for a moment. She told you accurately, he said. He leaned forward slightly. Why do you do construction work? Because it was available, Kwesi said, and I am good at it and I needed to keep the house. Do you want to stay in construction work? Kwesi was honest. I want to run something, not work for someone else forever. But I do not have the money to start anything and I do not have the education. So right now, yes, construction work. Alu looked at him. Something in his expression settled. You are honest, he said. I do not see the point in being anything else, Kwesi said. Alu leaned back. He looked at Amara, who was sitting to Kwesi's left and who had been watching both of them with the full attention expression that was her most characteristic quality. He is honest, Alu said to his daughter, as if confirming a fact that had already been established. I know, Papa, Amara said. And something passed between the two of them, father and daughter, the private communication of two people who had long ago established a shared standard and were now quietly agreeing that this particular person met it. On the bus home, he was taking the bus home now. Amara had insisted and pressed the fare into his hand before he left. Kwesi called his brother. "I need to tell you something," he said when Kofi answered. "What?" "I met a girl's." A pause. "Okay," Kofi said. "Her father is," he stopped. "He is a very successful man in real estate and construction." "Okay," Kofi said again, same flat tone. "Kofi, I need you to understand that things might be about to change, and I need you to decide whether you are going to be part of that change or whether you are going to stay the same." Another long pause. "Are you serious about this girl?" Kofi said. "Yes," Kwesi said simply. He heard his brother breathe. "Come home," Kofi said, "I will make food." It was the first time Kofi had made food in as long as Kwesi could remember. Something was shifting. 3 weeks later, Amara sat across from Kwesi in the outdoor seating area of a small restaurant in Victoria Island and said what she had been thinking for 6 weeks. "I am in love with you," she said, no preamble, no build-up. He looked at her. "Amara, I know what you're going to say." "You do not. You are going to say the money is wrong, that you are poor and I am not, that the difference between us is too big, that this does not make sense." He was quiet because she was exactly right. "And you are wrong," she said, "not about the facts are true, but you are wrong about what they mean." She leaned forward. "My father had nothing when he started. The woman who gave him the money to register his first business was a woman who had almost nothing herself, a church friend who believed in him. The money she gave him changed everything. It did not make it her company, it gave him the foundation to build his own." She looked at him steadily. "That is what I want to do. Not give you money, give you the foundation. A loan from my father to start your own construction company. When you are successful, you pay it back. It is business. You are not taking a gift, you are taking an opportunity." He looked at his hands on the table, he looked at her face. "You are also very fast," he said. She laughed, a real laugh. "I told you, I know what I want when I see it." "Your father already knows I am planning to say this to you," he agrees. He stared at her. "He agrees," she repeated. He said, and these are his exact words, that a man who walks home 90 minutes in the dark so a stranger can get on the bus is not a man who needs rescuing. He is a man who needs a door opened. Kwesi sat with this for a long time. The restaurant around them moved at its own pace. The city outside continued. And Kwesi Boateng, 22 years old, construction worker, orphan, caretaker of a lazy brother, person who had almost stopped hopping, sat very still with the feeling of a door that was opening. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she raised her eyebrows. "Okay to the loan, okay to the company," he looked at her, "and okay to you, all of it okay." She reached across the table and took his hand. They sat like that until the food came. They were married 4 months after the bus stop. People said it was too fast. People always say that. The people who said it were the people who had not sat across from both of them in a room and watched the quality of attention they paid to each other, the specific, unhurried attention of two people who had found something real and recognized it clearly enough to move without fear. Amara's family hosted the wedding. Not an ostentatious event, Funk's instinct for warmth ruled the planning, and the result was a celebration that felt like the people in it, not the budget behind it. 400 guests. Real food, real music. The kind of wedding where everyone present remembers the feeling afterward rather than the decorations. Kwesi wore a suit, his first proper suit, tailored, fitted correctly for the first time in his life. He stood at the front and watched his bride walk toward him and felt something he had not felt in so long that he had almost forgotten the name for it. He felt hope. Not the brittle, temporary hope of a good day followed by a bad one. The deep-rooted, structural hope of a person who has found something solid to stand on. Kofi was at the wedding. He was in the third row in a good shirt that Kwesi had bought him, and he looked at the proceedings with an expression that nobody would have called simple. When Kwesi caught his eye once, briefly, Kofi nodded. A small nod. Kwesi nodded back. It was the closest thing to peace they had achieved in years. After the wedding, after the dancing and the food and the speeches and the hour at the end when the older guests had left, and it was just their people and the music was louder, Amara and Kwesi sat together at the edge of the dance floor and she leaned against his shoulder. "Ready?" she said. He knew what she meant, not for the night, for what was coming. "Yes," he said. The loan from Alu was structured as a formal business arrangement. A document, an interest rate low but present because Alu had been precise about this with Kwesi. A free gift teaches you nothing. A loan with interest teaches you to make the money work. A repayment schedule, terms that were fair and specific. Kwesi read every line of it, twice. He asked Mr. Akampong no wrong story. He asked the family's lawyer 3 questions that were the right 3 questions, the kind of questions you ask when you have been paying attention to money your whole life even when there was very little of it. He signed it. Boteng Construction Services was registered the following week. It was not, to start, dramatically different from the company he had been working for. Same kind of work, residential construction, renovations, small commercial projects. The difference was ownership. The difference was that every decision was his, every profit was his, and every mistake was also his. He found that the third category concentrated the mind wonderfully. He hired 2 workers to start, both of them from Mensa Construction, men he had worked alongside who he knew were reliable, the specific reliability of people who showed up on time and did what they said they would do. He paid them slightly above the market rate because he had been the person being paid the market rate, and he knew what slightly above it felt like. He was meticulous about everything, arriving at every site before his workers, being the last to leave, inspecting every section of every project personally. He had watched how Mr. Antwi ran his crew and how Mensa Construction ran its projects, and he had filed away every lesson about what the good foremen did and what the mediocre ones didn't. He applied all of it. The first contract was a renovation in Lekki. A referral from one of Alu's business contacts who had heard that his son-in-law was starting a construction company. Kwesi did not know this at the time. Alu had made the introduction quietly, the way he did most things, without announcement. Kwesi delivered the Lekki renovation exactly on budget and 3 days ahead of schedule. The client called Alu directly to tell him. Alu told him nothing because he had known nothing about the connection. He called Amara. "Did you tell your father about the Lekki job?" she asked Kwesi that evening. "No, why?" She told him. He was quiet for a moment, not upset, thinking. "He gave me a referral," Kwesi said. "He introduced you to someone, the referral you earned. He should have told me. He thought you might not take the job if you knew it came from him, that you would want to win it on your own." "He was right," Kwesi said. "Also right that you needed a first job to show what you could do," Amara said. "Was the job any different because of where it came from?" He thought about it. "No," he said. "Then there you are." He called Alu the next morning and thanked him, directly, clearly, without making it bigger or smaller than it was. Alu received it the same way. "Do not waste the connection," Alu said. "I will not," Kwesi said. He did not. The second contract was larger, a new construction project in Aikja, sourced directly this time, through the client from Lekki who had told a colleague. Kwesi submitted a competitive bid that was not the cheapest but was the most thorough. He had learned this from watching Alu's company win contracts. That thoroughness in the bid communicated reliability in execution, and reliability was what serious clients paid for. He won the bid. By month 6 of Boteng Construction Services, he had 4 active projects and 9 employees. By month 9, he had won a contract from a property developer, not Alu's company, a competitor which felt important to Kwesi in a way he could not fully explain, but that Alu, when he heard about it, simply smiled at. "You understand why that matters," Alu said. "Because it is not your name that got it," Kwesi said. "Correct. Does it bother you that I care about that?" Alu looked at him. "No," he said, "it means you are building something real. Real things stand on their own eventually." Amara was with him through every step. Not as a silent partner, as an active one. She knew the construction industry from her father's company, and she brought that knowledge to Kwesi's company freely, not as the boss's daughter but as a person who understood the operational side deeply. She reviewed his contracts. She questioned his cost estimates. She asked hard questions about margins that he sometimes did not want to hear but always needed to. He gave her the same. When her company was bidding on a large residential project and she was preparing the proposal, she brought it home and they went through it together at the kitchen table after dinner, both with tea, both with the specific focused energy of two people who worked best when they were working together. The proposal one, he took no credit. She told the team it had been strengthened by a fresh set of eyes. She did not say whose eyes. He found out later and said nothing. Just looked at her with the look she had come to know meant something had landed. The loan was repaid at month 14. Not the scheduled end date. 14 months in, with the project stacked and the cash flow solid and the company running with a momentum that had exceeded every projection Kwesi had written in the first business plan, he sat down with the numbers and understood that he could clear it. He called Alu. "I want to repay the loan," he said, "in full now." A pause. "You are ahead of schedule," Alu said. "I know. You do not have to." "I know I do not have to, I want to." The payment cleared on a Thursday. Kwesi told Amara that evening. She was in the kitchen, he stood in the doorway. "It is paid," he said. She turned around. She looked at him for a moment, at the face of a man who had walked home 90 minutes in the dark 2 years ago with nothing in his pockets, and who was now standing in the kitchen of their apartment, debt-free, running a company that was generating real money. She did not say anything. She crossed the kitchen and put her arms around him. He held her. Outside, the city moved at its own pace, entirely unaware of what had just happened in the kitchen of an apartment in Lagos. At month 18, Kwesi was a millionaire. Not in the abstract sense of net worth on paper. In the operational sense, cash in accounts, contracts in progress, a company that had 17 employees, 4 company vehicles, and a pipeline of work that extended 2 years forward. He called his parents, which meant he sat quietly for a moment with the specific grief of a person who wants to share news and has no one to share it with in the direction it most deserves to go. He called Kofi instead. Kofi had taken a job 3 months after the wedding. Not a good job, a basic construction labor position with a small firm across the city, but a job. He had made that choice on his own, and Kwesi had not asked about it, and Kofi had not explained it, and the space between that choice and the phone call on the day Kwesi had told him about Amara was the space where something had shifted. "I need to tell you something," Kwesi said. "What?" "The company is doing well." A pause. "How well?" Kofi said. Kwesi told him. Another longer pause. "I thought about it," Kofi said. "What you said, about being 8 years old and solving problems for both of us. I remember." "I did not," Kofi stopped, then started again. "I let you carry everything for a long time. I do not know why. I have thought about it and I do not have a good answer." "You do not need a good answer," Kwesi said. "I am sorry," Kofi said. The word landed the way it needed to, simply, without drama. "I know," Kwesi said. It was Kwesi who brought it up first. They were at dinner at Alu and Funk's house on a Sunday, one of the regular Sunday dinners that had become a ritual in the 2 years since the wedding. The 4 of them at the large dining table, food and conversation flowing freely, and Kwesi put down his fork and said, "I want to go abroad." Everyone looked at him. "For education," he said. "A proper degree, business management, construction management, something that gives me the formal tools I have been building informally." Alu nodded slowly. He had been expecting this conversation, not knowing when it would come. Amara, however, was quiet. "The company," she started. "Can run," he said. "We have a strong team. I have been building toward this for the last 6 months, putting things in place, strengthening the management layer. It can run without me for 2 years if we set it up correctly." 2 years, she said. "I know it is long," he looked at her. "Come with me." "Kwesi." "I could not do the education I should have done because of money," he said. "I know the difference between what I know and what I am missing. I feel it in every meeting, in every negotiation. I do not want to run a company at a ceiling that could have been higher." He paused. "Come with me. You can study too, or work, or both, and we see the world together. That was part of the plan, was it not? We always said." "I know what we said," she said. The table was quiet. Funk looked at her daughter with the steady look of a woman who knew her daughter completely. "You are afraid," Funk said quietly to Amara. Amara looked at her mother. "Of what?" Alu asked. "Of it changing," Funk said simply. "Of leaving and coming back different, of the company in someone else's hands, of," she looked at Amara, "of the life you have built being less certain when you come back." Amara was quiet. "It will not be less certain," Kwesi said. He said it without force, just clearly. It will be more. Everything we have built is still here when we come back, but we come back better, both of us. She looked at him. She thought about her father at 24, registering a business alone. She thought about her mother, steady and certain through every phase of his rise. She thought about a girl standing at a bus stop with nothing, and a tired young man counting his last coins and the choice he made. One condition, she said. What? Anywhere we go, I choose the cities. He smiled, the full smile, the one that had taken her by surprise that first week on the phone when it had appeared, and she had understood he was not a person who smiled easily. Done, he said. They went to the United Kingdom first. Kwesi enrolled in an executive business program at a London business school that accepted working professionals with demonstrated experience in lieu of traditional academic qualifications. He had spent 3 months preparing the application, documenting the company's growth, the financials, the projects, building a case in writing for why his operational experience was the equivalent of the academic background he lacked. He was accepted. He sat in his first seminar in London, surrounded by professionals from 15 countries, bankers, engineers, entrepreneurs, consultants, and for the first week he felt the specific discomfort of being in a room where everyone else had gone to university and he had not. He recognized the feeling. He had felt it in smaller ways his whole life. The difference was that now he had enough experience to know that the feeling was not information, it was just a feeling. He did the reading, he contributed to discussions. He asked questions that the professor, a Scottish man named Dr. McAllister who had consulted for major construction firms across Africa and Asia, noticed were not textbook questions but field questions, questions that had been shaped by real problems rather than hypothetical ones. After the third seminar, Dr. McAllister stopped him. "Where have you been working?" he asked. Kwesi told him. Dr. McAllister looked at him for a moment. "You have already been applying half of what we cover in this program," he said. "I know," Kwesi said, "I want the other half." Dr. McAllister laughed. "You will get it." Amara enrolled in a strategic leadership program at the same institution. It was shorter, 8 months, and she spent the rest of the time working remotely for her father's company in a capacity that the firm had structured to accommodate her absence. London was gray and cold in the way that London is always gray and cold in November, and they were living in a rented flat in Peckham that was not their Lagos apartment but was theirs, which made it enough. They cooked together, they walked everywhere on weekends, they went to museums, markets, parks. Amara had been to London before on business trips, staying in hotels, seeing nothing but offices and conference rooms. This version of London, the version where you live somewhere and learn its rhythms, was completely different. She called her parents every Sunday. Her father asked about the program. Her mother asked about the food and the cold and whether Kwesi was studying enough or too much. Both, Amara said. She could hear her mother smile. They went to Cape Town for a month in the second year. Kwesi had read about the construction and property development market there, one of the most active in sub-Saharan Africa, and wanted to see it directly. They rented a flat in the city bowl. He spent 3 weeks taking meetings with developers, architects, and project managers, building a network that he stored carefully in the same methodical way he had stored everything since he was 8 years old, and had understood that attention was the most valuable thing he had. They spent the 4th week doing nothing useful and everything necessary. Cape Town in March was warm and bright. They drove the coastal roads. They ate at small restaurants. They went to a wine farm on a Saturday and sat outside with glasses of something Amara could name and Kwesi could not, and she taught him the vocabulary and he taught her the regional geology of the winelands because he had read about it that morning for exactly this purpose. "You still research before you go somewhere," she said. "Always," he said. "Even places we are going for leisure. Especially those," he said, "you enjoy things more when you understand them." She looked at him. "You are not normal," she said, with complete affection. "I know," he said. She took his hand and they stayed until the sun was far enough down that the temperature dropped and the farm staff came to light the outdoor heaters. They went to Dubai, to Singapore briefly for a construction technology conference that Kwesi had paid his own registration for and that was worth 3 times the cost. To Nairobi, where Amara's company had projects and where Kwesi met 3 contractors who would become, over the following years, professional contacts and then friends. And then, at the end of 2 years and 4 months, slightly longer than planned but adjusted correctly for what they were getting, they flew home. Lagos received them the way Lagos always receives people: loudly, warmly, chaotically, completely uninterested in giving you space to adjust. Alu and Funk were at the airport. Alu shook Kwesi's hand and held it for a moment. "The company held," Kwesi said. He had been watching the reports remotely the entire time. "It did more than hold," Alu said. This was true. The management team Kwesi had built before leaving, led by a project director named Emmanuel who had been with the company since month 8, had not just maintained but grown. 2 new contracts had been won in the second year of the absence. Revenue was up 18%. Kwesi processed this quietly. "Emmanuel," he said. "Credit where it belongs," Alu agreed. The house came next. Kwesi had been planning it for 6 months before they returned. Not planning as in looking at properties. Planning as in building it through Boateng Construction, on a plot in Lekki Phase 2 that he had purchased 2 years before they left, and that had been sitting, planned and permitted, waiting for him to come home and supervise it himself. He had designed it with Amara on a laptop in the London flat on winter evenings, both with tea, the way they had always done their most important work. Not a mansion, a home, large enough for what they needed, designed around how they actually lived. Her study with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on one wall, his home office with a drawing table where he could spread plans, a kitchen that was the center of the house rather than an afterthought, a garden because Amara had always wanted a garden. It was finished 3 months after they returned. They moved in on a Saturday. Amara stood in her study and ran her hand along the empty bookshelves. She had been collecting books for 2 years, and they arrived in 4 boxes that she had shipped from London, and she spent the first Sunday unpacking them and placing each one with the specific care of a person who has been waiting to do this for a long time. Kwesi watched her from the doorway. "You look happy," he said. "I am happy," she said, not performing it, stating it as a fact. He came into the room and looked at the bookshelves. "Fill them," he said. "I plan to," she said. "Kofi." Kwesi had called his brother from London every 2 weeks, not long calls, checking in. How was the job? How was the house? How was he? The job had changed. Kofi had moved from the basic laborer position to a slightly more skilled one. He was not, at 33, going to become a different person from the person he had been at 31. But he had become a slightly different version of himself, someone who showed up, who paid his own rent, who had stopped being carried. The day Kwesi came back from abroad, he drove to the small house. It was the same small house, same walls, same door, same narrow kitchen, but it was cleaner than Kwesi remembered. There were curtains in the window that had not been there before. Kofi made tea. They sat at the kitchen table where Kwesi had once added up numbers that did not add up and then stared at the wall. "You did it," Kofi said. "We did it," Kwesi said. He looked at his brother. "I want to offer you something, a job at Boateng Construction, starting at the bottom the way I started, no favors in terms of the work, but a chance." Kofi looked at the tea in his cup. "Because you are my brother," he said. "Because you showed up for yourself when I needed you to," Kwesi said. "That means something." A long pause. "Starting at the bottom," Kofi said. "Starting at the bottom." Kofi nodded once. "Okay," he said. Boateng Construction Services at the end of year 5 was unrecognizable from what it had been. 47 employees, a company vehicle fleet, an office in Victoria Island with a reception area and a conference room, and Kwesi's own office with a desk that faced a window, a detail he had insisted on when the office was designed, because he had spent years working outdoors and he wanted in his office to still feel the sky. Major contracts across Lagos and Abuja. 3 ongoing residential developments under the company's own development arm, a division Kwesi had started in year 3 after watching how Alu's real estate division generated returns that the pure construction work could not. A partnership agreement with 2 South African construction technology firms, sourced from the Cape Town trip. And a reputation, the specific reputation that Kwesi had watched Alu build word by word, project by project, for delivering exactly what was promised, exactly when it was promised. The phone rang one morning and it was Emmanuel, the project director, and he said, "The client for the Abuja Phase 2 project wants to meet directly with you, not the team, you." "Why?" Kwesi said. Because they have looked at our track record and they want to talk about a much larger contract, a government infrastructure project. They want to understand who they are dealing with. Kwesi looked at his hands, the calloused hands of a construction worker, still marked by the work even years after he had stepped back from the site-level labor. The hands of a man who had started mixing cement at 16. He put on his suit. He went to the meeting. He was 30 years old. He sat across from a government procurement committee and he talked for 40 minutes about his company, his methodology, his track record, his team. He was not performing. He was simply saying what was true clearly in the way he had always said things. They awarded the contract. It was the largest single contract in Boateng Construction's history. He called Amara from the car in the car park after the meeting. She answered on the first ring. It was the government infrastructure project, he said. A pause. The big one, she said. The big one. She was quiet for a moment. Come home, she said, I will make food. He laughed the full real laugh. Okay, he said. He sat in the car for a moment before starting it. He thought about the bus stop, the coins in his palm, the girl who had looked at him with eyes that saw him clearly, the walk home in the dark. He thought about standing at a kitchen table at 8 years old, carrying everything. He thought about his mother and his father, who he could not call. He thought about them anyway. Look, he said to the air in the car, look where we got. He started the engine. He drove home. So, that is Kwesi and Amara. That is where a bus fare goes. Not just from a hand to another hand. Not just from a tired young man to a frightened girl at a bus stop. From a moment of pure giving, giving from nothing, giving from a place so empty that most people would have looked away, to a life that neither of them could have imagined standing at that bus stop in the dark. But I want to stop here for a moment. Because this story is going to be heard by some people as a love story. And it is a love story, a real one, the kind built on honesty and work and two people who pay full attention to each other. And it is going to be heard by some people as a success story. And it is that too, a real one, the kind that starts with nothing and builds something lasting through the specific combination of genuine effort and genuine character. But what this story is really about is something simpler and much harder. It is about what you do when you have almost nothing. Not what you do when you have enough to be generous. Enough is easy. Generous with enough is the standard, the expected, the baseline. Nobody writes stories about people who gave a little when they had a lot. This story is about coins. About a young man who had exactly one bus fare left, not a spare one, not an extra one, the last one, and looked at a person who needed it more than he did and gave it without calculating whether he would get anything back. He would not have gotten anything back if Amara had been an ordinary girl. That is the truth. If she had simply been a person who needed bus fare and was grateful and went home and continued her life, Kwesi would have walked 90 minutes in the dark and that would have been the whole story. A kind act, unrecorded, unrewarded in any measurable way. And he would have done it anyway. That is the point. He gave because it was right, not because he expected a return. He told her honestly, I am very poor. I almost do not care about my own life right now, and then he gave her everything he had. That kind of giving is not a strategy. It is character. And character, in the long run, is the only thing that determines the quality of your life. Not your starting point, not your advantages, not who your parents were, not what your brother did or did not do, not the school you went to or did not go to. Character. Kwesi Boateng had everything taken from him at 6 years old and spent 16 years carrying what should have been shared by two people. He could have become bitter, he could have become closed. He could have reached the bus stop that evening and looked at the girl and thought, I have given enough, I have nothing left, and nobody would have blamed him. Instead, he looked at a stranger and thought, she needs this more than I do. That thought in that moment from that place of near emptiness was worth more than any amount of money. It was the exact thought that Oluwademi had recognized when Amara came home and told him the story. Olu had thought himself once at a bus stop very different from this one, in a different city at a different age, and he had acted on it, and the woman he had helped had funded his first business registration. He had spent 30 years understanding that certain moments of genuine giving with nothing guaranteed in return, were the real turning points. Not the contracts, not the connections, not the luck of being in the right place. The character that the universe, somehow, always finds a way to recognize. There is also something to say about Amara. She could have taken the coins and gone home and felt grateful and called it a life lesson. She could have said, "That was kind, what a good person, I hope he is well." Instead, she could not stop thinking about him. Not because he was rich, he was not because he was connected. He had no connections, because he was real in a world that had given her, in her privilege, mostly performances. She grew up watching her father build something from nothing, and she understood from that what it looked like when a person was operating from genuine character rather than calculated strategy. She had been looking for that quality in people for years, in business, in personal relationships, and finding it rarely. She found it at a bus stop. She went home and lay in her bed and understood that she had just met someone she was not going to forget, and she made the choice to call. That call, as much as the coins, was the beginning. Because generosity alone does not make a love story, it takes two people who both see clearly. Kwesi saw Amara at her most stripped back, afraid, without resources, having to ask a stranger for help, and he gave. Amara saw Kwesi at his most honest, tired, poor, almost hopeless, and she chose to know him better. Two people, full attention both ways. That is what made everything that followed possible. And then there is Kofi. The story of Kofi is the quietest part of this whole thing and maybe the most true. Kofi was not a villain, he was not cruel. He was a person who had been broken by the same loss that had hardened his brother and who had responded to it by becoming still rather than becoming strong. The difference between the brothers was not character in the deep sense, it was direction. Kwesi turned his pain outward into work, into responsibility, into movement. Kofi turned his pain inward into stillness, into the specific passivity of a person who has stopped expecting anything because expecting things and not getting them hurts less than not expecting at all. What Kwesi did, not the ultimatum, not the anger, it was the phone call from London, the regular checking in, the job offer from a place of genuine inclusion rather than obligation. He pulled his brother toward the door instead of pushing him through it. That was the right move, not dramatic, not loud, just consistent and kind. Kofi is at Boateng Construction now, starting at the bottom, learning slowly, showing up every day. He will not build an empire, that is not the point of his story. The point of his story is that he is building something, finally, something small and his own, something he earned, something that fills the hours that used to be empty. That is enough. Sometimes enough is the whole story. If this story moved you, if you felt the coins in your own pocket, if you thought of a person you know who gives from nothing and gets too little in return, then hit the like button right now. It is free, it matters, it is how we know these stories are reaching the right people. Subscribe to Fair Folktales and ring the notification bell. We are here every week with a story like this one. A story about someone who was counted out, a story about a quiet act that changed everything. A story about what real strength looks like when nobody is watching. Share this video with someone who needs it. You know who that person is. They have been carrying things they should not be carrying alone. Send this to them. Let them know that Fair Folktales sees them. And comment below. Tell us, what is the most honest thing you have ever said to a stranger? What is the most generous thing you have ever done when you had almost nothing? Tell us. We read every comment. Your story matters here. This is Fair Folktales. The greedy always fall, the overlooked always rise, and the ones who give from their lowest point, they always arrive somewhere worth arriving. We will see you in the next story.